Here's a key part of that. Uh, Dan, he never asked me what was going on. He just said, I know you got it handled. And he kept going about that whole evening like nothing was going on. Who does that? I would have fired me. I would have fired me on the spot, but he didn't. I say that was my best and worst day at Chick-Fil-A because obviously why it was worse, but best because I learned the true character of the company. And Dan, and because pressure situations, that's where you find out people's character. Again, if I was in the shoes, I would have come unglued, but he didn't. He just let me handle it and let us deal with it. He just went about like he normally does.
Need a partner who sees the big picture? Forza Management. We're not just property managers, we're strategic partners. Navigating the complex world of commercial real estate can be daunting. That's where Forza Management comes in. Forza Management provides services in the mountain and desert states and covers all types of asset classes, including retail, industrial, and office. Our team of experts delivers exceptional property management services, namely property maintenance, lease administration, and annual CAM reconciliations. When looking at your next property, check out our website at forzacommercial.com. Forza Management, maximizing your investment and minimizing your stress.
Back to the Dirt Dog Pod. We're super excited to have our guest today, Don Ikeler, Director of Development and Construction for the West Region for Chick-Fil-A.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Happy to have you here. It's our pleasure at the Dirt Dog Pod.
Well, I told you I'm already a big fan. I've listened to almost all the podcasts. Very interesting. All the different guests, everything from food to gyms, and very, very much enjoyed that.
Glad that you're enjoying the pod. We are huge fans of your restaurants. In fact, when we chose to locate our office that we're recording this in, on purpose, we chose the walkable nature of the Sugar House or Salt Lake City Chick-Fil-A.
It's a great area. Yeah. And yes, I had the pleasure of working on that location, so know it well.
It's such a joy, too, when you get to design them with a new urbanism overlay. Isn't that nice?
Yes. These cities that they must all go to the same conference. And so I have to confess, though, I'm coming clean here. So my undergrad.
This is a safe space. Okay. You should feel safe here at the Dirt Dog.
My undergrad is in urban and regional planning, city planning. So, I can get it. I understand it, and can say I've been on the other side of that counter and understand what they're thinking to some degree.
Yeah. The store functions so haphazard until they finally fix the entrances. That's been the best move ever.
Yes.
And I got to imagine volume has reflected that, but good.
Yes.
Hopefully it did.
Yes, it did. Yeah, it's doing very well. And yeah, we appreciate your business.
What's it like running the West region for development and construction?
So it's been a wild ride. So I've been with the company 18 years. And when I started with Chick-fil-A out west in Southern California, people didn't know what Chick-fil-A was. Chick-fil-A, they just hadn't experienced it. There were some malls, and when I started, there was a handful of locations in Southern California. But those early days, the volumes were lower. We were under 2 million. So I came from Carl's Jr., where much of the industry is pretty happy with something close to 2 million. But for Chick-fil-A, that's not where they wanted to be. And so it's been an interesting journey. And some of those early franchisees, what we call our owner operators, they weren't making a lot of money, honestly. Some not at all. But we doubled down and opened more restaurants, which helped. I think it's counterintuitive, right? Sometimes you think, oh, we need to pause. We need to wait. Mm-hmm. And we were just talking about this for Hawaii. And they say that we need to wait. But the reality is more locations actually helped. And obviously, most importantly was the work that our operators do with the customer service, the great food. That obviously is the biggest difference. But yeah, so it's been a wild ride since the last 18 years, seeing it grow for we're doing just in the West, a couple stores a year, half dozen, to now this year we'll do 35 restaurants in the West and about 175 nationally.
Wild. So you're responsible to get 35 restaurants built.
Yes.
And how big is your team?
So I have, right now I have 13 people on my team. So that includes development, construction, and we also have specialists, which some people might call coordinators. And then there's a separate real estate team and strategist team. Yeah.
So just to, walk it through from a base level,
Mm-hmm.
Chick-fil-A doesn't do build to suits with landlords. The preferred deal structure is to purchase or ground lease.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
And that's why inherently they have an internal development team like yourself.
Correct. But hey, we need a whole bunch of other people that help with our entitlements and permitting, help with the design, obviously outside architects and engineers. In fact, that's one of the reasons I got attracted to Chick-fil-A. I was at a conference, and there was a gentleman by the name of Greg Lawless, still with the company, and he was talking about how they treat their contractors and architects and engineers. And so many people in the industry, I hate to be this way, but they just treat them as a commodity, and the GCs and the architects and engineers. And he talked about there are partners in this, that we have long-term relationships with these architects, engineers, contractors. And because of that, we started a conversation. And then a year later, I was at Chick-fil-A.
Love that. So you're responsible to get 35 restaurants built. I would assume that there's probably some pretty intense pressure to get stores open.
Correct. Yes.
Especially with the volumes you guys are at.
Yes.
Because you're no longer at $2 million a unit.
No, it was funny sitting in those meetings, and they're talking about we want to see these types of increases. And quite frankly, I was like, hey guys, the McDonald's, the In-N-Outs of the world at that time, maybe they're doing close to, high twos, 3 million. And so I almost like, what are you guys talking about? And now to see average unit volume for Chick-fil-A for a freestander is almost $9 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is unheard of in the industry. So extremely blessed. But yes, yeah, that's interesting part of the growth.
So during that time period, some magic has happened. During the 18 years you've been at the company, obviously some magic has happened, and you guys have become like the absolute cool chicken spot. When do you think that occurred? When did you notice it?
Well, I think it started before. I think people who grew up in the South, Georgia, Texas, they knew it, but we didn't know it. I didn't know. After I first went to Chick-fil-A, experienced the hospitality, but also when I went to the home office for those first interviews, where I still wasn't sure I was going to take the job. The people that I met were so committed to the brand. The retention rate for staff is almost 98%. I mean, people don't leave. But the magic going back to that is really back to Truett. And first of all, it starts with servant leadership. I mean, we are there to serve our operators, our franchisees, and of course, great food and great service. But that's easy to say, right? It's so easy to say that. It's a whole nother thing to, for instance, just in the hiring. You go into our restaurants, a lot of times you see younger kids in there, right? 18, 19. It might be easier to hire someone that's going to stay for a long time, because a lot of those people are 18, 19, they go to college, right? Mm-hmm. But it's those hiring practices and entrusting with them and putting values in them that they learn customer service. A lot of times Dan, who's Truett's son, who ran the company after Dan, he just talked about how we get to grow these people that may not know how to do customer service, may not know how to even interact, look people in the eyes and greet people, and train them and learn how to greet customers and how to interact with them.
It's amazing. It's such an unreal company from the customer service perspective. It's so infrequent you ever have a dining experience that's not a good experience.
It is. I think as you go to in past lives, most of the complaints or comments that we got were on the negative side.
Yeah.
And to go to Chick-fil-A, and most of the compliments that we get or comments that we get from friends that dine in or just go there are positive. And so that's in the QSR business, that is just not heard of. So just very grateful, but it goes back to the training of those team members.
Somewhere in there, when the magic turned on and Chick-fil-A became the chicken concept, do you think, did your daytime job become easier? Was it easier to get through a city? Do you feel like?
I don't Out west, I didn't totally feel that. I think the cities are very challenging, right? So when our volume started to jump, in some ways with the cities, there were some cities that really wanted us, and there was this whole, I don't know if you remember the Krispy Kreme phase. Like cities wanted Krispy Kremes.
Yes.
They were the darling for quite a while, but actually somewhat the opposite. It was the traffic. So as we went into areas like Washington, the first few openings were so big that it caused the opposite. And we had a lot of trouble getting through the entitlement process with the cities because they knew the traffic it was talked about on TV. And so
never a good sign.
Yeah. No, but hey, we're fortunate working with those cities and making it happen with their traffic departments, things like that.
Yeah, it's wild. I remember when In-N-Out opened their first Denver location, which was maybe 2 years ago or something. And people were lined up, and the line was so long you could fly to Las Vegas, get an In-N-Out, and fly back in the time that it would take you to get through the drive-through.
That's a great story. And they're such a beloved Southern California brand. Yeah, that was great. That was all over the news.
Yeah,
yes.
Funny. So of all those openings, what's been just one of the most remarkable? Just what was an explosive opening? One that you're kind of like, oh, whoa.
It was probably that Bellevue, Washington. It was a smaller site, and it was just so big that it backed up off the site and onto the freeway. And so, and when we went there, we did our studies about, hey, do they know about Chick-fil-A? And there was some awareness, but it was pretty low brand awareness. So we were not expecting that. So Bellevue, Washington, our first openings up there. We also opened one at Tacoma and then up at Linwood about the same time. And all of them were just off the charts. And so it was just unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. Good chicken market up there, I hear from a lot of your peers.
It's been a great market.
Yeah.
It's challenging from a cost perspective on construction. They have a tax on construction in Washington. But yes, it's a great market.
The model has changed. The floor plan's changed, right? Quite a bit in that time period. What's the current prototype and what are you trying to build?
Size of the building. Believe it or not, it's around 6,000 square feet. So in the QSR business, it's pretty large. Most of our competitors, probably 3,000 to 5,000. So we're pushing 6,000. So we're actually looking to reduce it a little bit. During COVID, probably a lot of the folks with drive-throughs, it was just like, hey, so much business. How do we get them through? Just what does a dining room look like? And now, just the channels, right? You have so many different channels that people are coming in. So you have third party, right? Uber Eats, those sort of things. Of course, the drive-through. You have people that come in and just want to take the food to go using our app. So designing the restaurants to accommodate that's a big thing. And then just continuing to improve the drive-through. We've done things like a lot of the competitors have is the canopies over the drive-throughs. And then, one that sounds pretty basic that's been really interesting to me is having a door in the drive-through. I got to admit, when we first started talking about that, I'm like, why are we doing a door there? Like, it's so, why do we need to do that? But I would say two things. One, obviously, efficiency by being able to hand deliver that to the customer. It's another opportunity to engage that customer because the drive-through is so transactional, right? When you go through the drive-through, take your order. Hopefully, we're helping that by having order takers outside. But it's very transactional. Pay your money, get your food. But with that door, it removes a barrier. And so you're able to engage the customer. So when I went and saw it for the first time, I think we went out to Texas and saw it, I was a little skeptical. I'm like, why do we need to be doing this? But once I experienced it, it was such a difference. And I was asking the team members and they said, yes, the engagement with the customer was such a differentiator and they could actually get more food out there quicker, right? Trying to get your hands and get things through there is a little different. So, so that's what's changed. The biggest one is just all the different channels, right? They're not just coming to the counter and going through the drive-through. We have all these different channels that we're trying to accommodate at these volumes. It makes it difficult.
So with the 6,000 foot floor plate, Did you go with 2 cook lines and you have 1 cook line dedicated to the dining room and third-party meal delivery, and then 1 dedicated to drive-through?
No, it doesn't. That's what I thought we would be doing. If we go way back when I started, we had what's called the L kitchen. So it was just single-sided prep. And then we had what we call the center line, dual-sided prep. So some of the restaurants run it that way, but in most cases, no, they're running both sides, and they can go either. Well, to answer your question, the kitchen's grown the most, right?
Oh,
so
really?
yes, just in terms of number of fryers, so our pressure cookers that we have back there, storage, freezer space, but really, yes, the engine's gotten bigger.
Yeah.
That they can handle quite a bit of capacity. So yes, the kitchen, because our seating is stayed around about 100 seats. We actually went lower than that. Coming out of COVID, people were wondering, are people going to come back to the dining room? To me, it seemed obvious, like, yes, people are going to come back, right? They don't want to sit in their car and eat a sandwich. They want to come in and enjoy it. So that's grown. Also, just more room for team member space where they can sit and take a break, things like that. But yeah. So the kitchen's really continues to grow.
That makes total sense, right? I mean, your volume is 4 times what it was, right, when you started. So of course,
I don't even know how they do it sometimes. Like the amount of transactions that go through there. I'm so impressed with our operators and team members, how they make that happen.
It really is mind blowing, when you think through the volume. It seems like about 18 months ago that in Texas, you started trying, it looked like you were going from perfectly good, viable restaurants that were doing really good volumes and saying, hey, let's just double the size of it and go down the street is what it looked like from my perspective. And a lot of people, were talking about that. Is that still kind of the move to go back and look at some of these legacy assets that might have been a 3,500 foot dining room, a restaurant and increase it in size if you could move them?
Yeah, if we can move it or rebuild it, yes. So depending on the age of the asset, so we tend to look at it in two different segments. Right about 15 years, 7 to 10 years, we take a look at it. We do a refresh of it. So, but that's mostly interior, counter forward, and then the next big one is we look at about 20 years, 15 to 20 is where we look at those to determine if we're going to relocate it, rebuild it. Many times we need to upgrade the kitchen, but yes, it makes sense. Maybe the market's moved, right? At one time you were at Main and Main, but now the center's someplace else. So do you build a second location there or do you relocate? So a lot of that going on, as you talked about, like stores that have been around 20 to 30 years.
So you have a 6,000 foot floor plate. You got a big old drive-through light. Is there a targeted car stack that you're looking for there?
Yeah. So that was the very, very interesting to me as I came on board and it's continued to grow is we like to have that 30 to 40 car stack, which seems crazy. When I came over, it was much, much less than that, but we need it as far as we want to make sure we're not backing up into the centers. The big boxes, they don't want us blocking anything. We don't want to, right? When we don't want to back up onto the street, we want to be good neighbors. But yeah, so that's been interesting too. We started with just a single lane drive-through when I first came over. Then it went from the dual ordering to single, and now it's dual all the way around in many cases where we can do that, where they're actually delivering to that outside lane.
So what size of lot are you finding that a prototype fits on these days?
So a few years ago, we probably would have said an acre and a half. We're probably 1.5 to 2 acres now, assuming no cross parking and things like that is what we're looking at.
I was recently on a hunting trip with one of my Twitter friends, Ken Ashley, and in just outside of Atlanta. And I got to go see the elevated drive-through concept.
Okay, good. Yes.
Which was fascinating.
It is. Yeah. It is very fascinating. I think the things that you have to do, we even had a location up in New York where it has actually nobody, all you do is order and then you pick up and there's no one actually there. So trying that. But back to your, that location, yes, very interesting. That one does have two prep lines for that. So it's got a huge amount of capacity. But I think you always have to be trying something new. You're innovating. You're trying to figure out what's the next big thing. And sometimes it might not work, and look at where we've gone and decided that we probably pushed the limit on too small of the sizes of a lot. But if you're not pushing that edge, then you're probably not trying some new things. So that's a great example where we're saying, hey, what can we make work here? What are we going to innovate?
So you're out hunting for 1.5 to 2 acres, prime corners, prime spots. You find one. Walk us through the typical process to get a Chick-fil-A constructed and open there.
Yes. So obviously, finding location, real estate, we have market strategists, which I think is a little bit of our secret sauce. A lot of times, or it used to be that, the real estate person was along with their broker. That was it. Like, right. They did the analytics and now we have a market strategist. And I think it's that right brain, left brain. Like a lot of good real estate guys and ladies, they know good real estate, but then you back it up with analytics. And I think it's that right brain, left brain. But so yes, right location, obviously. And then some of the biggest challenges are really with the cities, right? A lot of these cities, especially out west, we very rarely build a prototype. We either have to modify the exterior in some way, aesthetics, but then the layout, many times it's not ideal, though the layout, Sugar House is a good example. When we first laid that out, it wasn't laid out that way, but new urbanism, all these things where they want to pull it towards the street. At least in this location, I will say that people are actually walking there. But my favorite is when they want to do that in front of a Home Depot. Right. Like someone's not buying 2x4s and then walking over there
at some intersection with 100,000 cars a day.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. See, this one makes sense. Yeah. But so working with the cities, and I really think that that's the magic is you start to work with the cities. Again, if you approach it not with a transactional mindset. And we've been into cities where they told us you're not going to get a drive-through here. We had one in Laguna Hills, Southern California, and they said you're not going to get a drive-through here. But if we have good folks that work with the city, both on our staff and then our consultants, and engaging with them where you start having a dialogue and say, no, you can't, no drive-through along the street. That's one we get a lot. Okay, well, why not? Let's walk through that. Mm-hmm. And well, we don't want the drive-through right along the street. Okay. Well, you want our building against the street. The drive-through probably has to be there as well. And so walking through where you get creative. Hey, let's talk about, in many cases, we've actually done structures up against the street. We've, easy things are hedges and walls and things like that, but we've gotten more elaborate. We have one in Phoenix where it's almost a full tunnel that you drive through. It's open on one side, but so those creative things where you just start to have that dialogue where you're going back and forth on how can we solve this? And I think when you get the city, into problem solving mode instead of no mode, where you start to interact with them, I think that's where you that's the magic, right? And those are the best days when you've been told by city, you're not going to get approved here. This isn't going to happen, to starting selling chicken a couple of years later.
Is there a Chick-fil-A in Laguna Hills?
There is.
Oh,
yes.
There you go.
Yes.
So you prevail.
Yes. Actually, the funny story about that is the mayor really liked Chick-fil-A because he went there all the time to one of our other locations. And so I think that helped.
Nothing wrong with getting the mayor on board.
Nope.
Or a couple of key council members.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that is interesting. So you work your way through the process, and what are you finding typically with cities these days? How long, if you aren't doing a rezone, you're not doing replatting, so you're zoned for drive-through, maybe you got a conditional use, right? But how long are you seeing the site plan approval take these days? Is that a 6-month process for you?
Yeah. So, total process from, if we don't have major hurdles, replat, rezoning, those kind of things, usually in the West, we're seeing about 38 months from when we get the deal approved internally, the LOI signed, to when we're selling chicken. So over 3 years. But that process, just with the city, the entitlement process is running 6 months to a year, and then same for the permitting. So it continues to extend. Obviously, you get into LA, some of the Bay Area cities, it becomes more challenging. But yeah, that's the time frame that it takes.
Yeah. Just wild how long it takes to get through the process sometimes, isn't it?
It's what's funny is when you talk to people that are not in the industry and they don't understand. They're like, "Why does the city care? Why do they push back?" And I always think that either you have to either at one time own your own business or have to get something approved by a city to truly understand it. I think most politicians should need to do that to understand the other side of the counter. But in any case, yeah, it's very challenging, and but I also love what we do. Our team. I was recently talking to someone on my team, and her name's Christine, and she's working the Bay Area, and just very challenging projects with the city, community. And I said, "Oh, are you tired of working in the Bay Area?" And she goes, "No, I love it." So people
There you go.
that do what we do, right? They love the challenge. They love the negotiation of the real estate, finding the real estate, building it. Those challenges is what we get up in the morning and love to do.
Yeah, that's good. It just shows you that you're in the right spot if that's what you're liking. Right?
Amen. Yes.
One of the parts of that whole time frame thing that blows me away, and if you a little bit here because of your urban planning degree. I don't need a degree to do what I do for a living, but our architects and engineers sure do, right? And our city planners, need some version of a background, whether it was urban planning or something, right? Because, those are the folks that are actually doing the technical work of here's exactly what you need to build, right?
Yes.
And then the city side, they need to review it. By the way, if any of our architects, engineers, or city people are listening, please move faster.
Yes, yes.
However, I do understand why that part takes the time, but it's never that takes the time. It's everything else. And that part is the part that just kind of blows me away. Have you seen that change over 18 years?
Yes, it's just continued to extend out. I think a lot of the requirements placed on us in the industry, building industry, it's just the requirements have continued to grow. And it's funny, you think all these things that have changed, going from AutoCAD to, some Revit and some of these other things, we're all supposed to make it quicker, but the process, continues to take longer. And to be fair, a lot of these cities are understaffed, right? They're understaffed. COVID especially you talk to others in the industry and they say the same thing, that there's staff are working remote and things like this. It's hard to get in touch with them. They're doing the best they can too, right? They are. You got to think the best of people. They're trying to work through the system, but they're short-staffed a lot as well.
That's been one part I think that has been a gap post-COVID. All of the land sellers in general in the world never really adjusted their timeframes of what they want you to buy their land. And meanwhile, it's like, right. So Ted reviews every single submittal that comes in for the whole city of 500,000 people, right? So Ted is quite busy. Right?
Yes.
It might take us 8 months to get Ted to even recognize we're here.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to flip this over to our real estate folks so they understand, and some of our landlords, but it is it's challenging to say, like, why does it take that long? It doesn't even make, if you think about it, just logically, it shouldn't take that long, but it does. It's a bureaucracy and you're working through it.
I always just say good things take time, right? And especially when you're doing the kind of volume that you're doing, it's really like planning, 4 Carl's Juniors, right? Mm-hmm. And so you got to take your time and really think through how is, this thing is going nowhere once it's open. So,
yes.
We better make sure we open it right?
And we always talk about, this is a 30-year decision, right? What we're doing, what we're planning, what we're laying out, and the back and forth with the city when we disagree with something that's going to hurt us operationally. It's a 30-year decision. So let's get it right. And it's worth getting it right the first time so that we don't have to come back and make changes and make sure that operators set up for success, because many of our operators, they only have one location. So different than past lives, McDonald's, Carl's, other franchise, they might have 10, 20, 30, 50 locations. Our operators, they have one location, maybe 2, but vast majority of their sole income comes from one location. So I was at a dedication dinner last night down in Costa Mesa, California, and the thinking about him and how he's trying to provide for his family, one location, that's it. So we better get it right.
I like that though, because his whole, he or she's whole livelihood is attached to that store. Right. The success is largely dependent upon that person showing up and driving the team.
It is that's the secret to it. Right. So Truett when he first started his first diner, if you will, back in 1946. He worked it every day. That's why we're not open on Sundays. Also, he said, he joked, I don't want to wash dishes on Sunday, and I don't think the team members should either. But that's the way it started. And that was the secret sauce. He understood that a local owner operator, someone who Eric that you have down the road for Sugar House, he lives in the community. Yeah. And so as a part of that, he runs into his customers every day, but his livelihood comes from that one location. And so he puts everything into it. And the bond that he has with his customers, his team members, is unlike anything I've ever seen. Last night, he was the operator. He was tearing up, talking about his team members and what they meant to him and his leaders in his business. You don't get that a lot. You just don't. But again, that's the care for the community.
Yeah, you certainly don't get the passion, right, and the commitment.
Yes.
How cool is that? Tell us about, if I want to go rogue today and I say, all right, I'm done with trying to build buildings because, as you well know, it's not that fun right now. And I want to go be an operator of a Chick-fil-A. Mm-hmm. How does that work?
Yeah, so we get a lot of what we call expressions of interest. They just submit something online. And so we might have, because some operators move around and things like that. So we'll get 20, 30,000, what we call expressions of interest in a year for locations where we may only give out 125, 150 locations. But the cool thing about it, it's only $10,000. So Chick-fil-A, we do the lease, we do the purchase.
So it's not a franchise, but the equivalent of like a franchise fee at Chick-fil-A is $10,000.
It's $10,000, which is refundable when they leave, if they ever should leave. So that's $10,000. And so Chick-fil-A, we find the land, we find the location. Other franchisors, they make the operators do that, but we do that. We build the building, design it, build it, the equipment, even we own the equipment. And so I think what you get out of that is that many times to get into a lot of franchise locations or other franchisors, you have to have a capital, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's 100, 200,000. If McDonald's, probably $1 million. Mm-hmm. And so I think what we get out of that, we talk about, it's just not about, do they have cash? Because they don't really need to have that, but it's the character of the people. So we're looking for people that want to invest and be a part of the community. It's surprising how much that's a big part of being a Chick-fil-A franchisee or owner operator, is how much do they want to engage in the community? Because we do a lot more national marketing, but still it's a smaller portion compared to some of the competitors.
What's an example of engaging with the community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what it looks like, the expression of that is they're engaged in their local churches, AYSO, soccer. Mm-hmm. They're with the local high schools, where the high school comes in and they maybe one night set up so a portion of the proceeds go back. So that's what it looks like, engaging with the community. And ultimately they want someone that's ready for that, because that's the marketing, that's the part, and the investment, the long-term investment in the community.
It's really probably the best grassroots marketing you could ever have.
It really is. It's magic, and it's investing. It's showing. I think the community wants to know that you care, right? There's a lot of brands that say they care, and there's a lot of companies that do amazing things, but there's that expression of engaging with the community is something that is magic, that pays dividends long term, because they want to ultimately they want a business that feels like they care about them, right? That's a part of it and a part of the community. But yeah, so $10,000 up front, we own the building and everything, and then after rent, we split the profits 50-50. So it allows people that maybe they just came out of college, they've worked at Chick-fil-A, went to college, and are looking for something to do after that in the business. We have a lot of people come out of the military, their second career. So again, I think it's an opportunity where maybe they go down the road and try and get another franchise community. They wouldn't be able to do that. But with Chick-fil-A, it's an opportunity.
You've had a the background of having experience with other companies
Mhm.
that have debt and they are using leverage to grow. And sometimes they're taking stockholder money, sometimes they're doing other things. Your company is so unique in that there is no debt and there are no stockholders other than family
Yeah,
members,
the
right?
family members, the
Um,
Cathys.
how do you find that? Does that help? Does it hurt?
I think it helps. I think especially as when you're being able to think long term. So, for instance, let's say our target is 150 openings for the year, but those last few just don't make sense to do those deals, or they're not the right time to open them. We can make the right long-term decisions, the right long-term investment, because when you're and I've done this in the past, where you have shareholders, you have to meet those obligations. They want to see that return, and if you don't hit that, then the share price goes down. Everybody's losing money. But when you're able to make the right long-term decisions, you're able to, because those are in conflict sometimes, right? Short-term versus
Sure.
long-term, right?
Yeah.
The right short-term or long-term decision may not be to reinvest in the business, and we do a lot of that. It's a whole separate group, but we do a lot of reinvestment, probably sooner than a lot of our competitors do. But we want to make sure that all of the locations are continuously looking good. So, yeah, I think it just is a different perspective that is very helpful. But much like the rest of the industry right now, construction costs are so high that we are making sure that we are continuing to relook at, hey, how can we spend our money most efficiently? So we continue to do that.
It really does enable you to be in such a better position. I'm sure you can think way more clearly. Every time you have passive, clear thought without outside pressures of, influence from shareholders or influence from partners or private equity, it is just interesting what you're able to accomplish.
It is. I think we still have that mindset of a stewardship. It's in our corporate purpose to be good stewards of all that's been entrusted to us. And so as we're going about our work, we're able to do that, but with a long-term perspective versus, hey, good stewards in the next 12 months, right? So it's balancing both of those. What's good long-term for the brand, for the operator? Because when the operator's doing well, everybody's doing well.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective to have. What are the various Cathy family members like to work with? I mean, it's truly a family office feel still, yeah?
It is. Well, so there's really only two offices. There's the office in Atlanta, the big office, our support center, and then in Irvine, Southern California, there's about 75 of us in that office. But I had the opportunity. So Truett is the founder. Dan his son was the CEO after that. And now Dan's son, so the grandson of the owner, is currently in charge of the company. And so I had the pleasure when I started that Andrew actually came out west and was working. And so Andrew is amazing. And I have no doubts about the company, given who he is. When he was in the office, I got to tell you, if it was me was out there, Andrew liked to surf. When he was out west, he got a love for that. And so I got to admit, I'd be like, hey, guys, I'm going to go surfing. I'll see you guys in a couple hours and maybe I'll come in.
Yeah.
Andrew was the first one in. He worked hard, but he was a part of the team. We just like the team did, we tease each other and he was a part of that, but he was learning too. He was learning the business. And so I have no doubts about that. But yeah, I'm grateful that I got to experience that and just who they are. And that's the Cathys, that I go back to that servant leadership. And I'll never forget Dan when he was in charge. He was out west one time and we were walking through a parking lot at Home Depot. He just wanted to go look at it. And he, on his way in, he's picking up trash, and not in a showy way. I've been around people that do that just to, hey, I'm picking up trash. That's not Dan. He picks up trash on his way in, of course, to the restaurants, and encourages everyone to do that. But that's just who he is. In fact, at one point, it was funny. We were going to drive and look at some other locations, and so he insisted I sit in the front seat. And so finally I said, okay, Dan, I'll sit in the front seat. I'm like, you haven't seen this. You should sit in the front. He then went and put my seatbelt on. So a little awkward, I'll admit, but Dan, that's just who he is. Like that's who he is. He is a servant leader. And funny story, if you don't mind me, I'd talk about my best and worst day at Chick-fil-A.
100%. Let's go.
Okay. It was an opening that was the closest to my house. I'd only been on board for a year or two.
Why is it always the ones that are closest to your house
gosh.
that are always the nightmares?
My boss, actually my boss's boss was in town, so he was going to be there. So we used to do the first 100. We don't do that anymore. Now we give things to what we call heroes in the community. But at that time, we did the first 100. So that's where people would camp out the night before, the first 100 people, and they got free Chick-fil-A for a year. So it was a big deal. And so everybody's camping there. A few of my neighbors are there. My wife and family stopped by. Dan at that time was on a kick where he's going to every opening.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Dan was going to sleep overnight there. CEO of the company, he's sleeping there. And I don't mean like he sneaks off to a hotel. No, in a tent, on a sleeping bag in the drive-thru. Well, what started to happen, this was a conversion, a Wendy's conversion. And someone said, "Hey, Don, there's a problem in the back." So I go back there and take a look, and I realized that some of the floor sinks are starting to back up and the toilets. So immediately there's a sewer problem. We got 100 people in the parking lot sleeping there. The toilets don't work.
Amazing.
Andrew Cathy's there, the local pastor who's a big church out there, Pastor Rick Warren, stopped by. And we got 100 people in the parking lot. And I remember this is all going in, and my wife, who was there, stopped by. She comes up, she could tell something was wrong. She goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, babe, I'm trying to deal with something." So there's a Chili's next door. First, we start sending people to the bathroom at this Chili's. This is over a couple hours. We're trying to get a plumber out there. Then finally, Chili's is like, "No more." Start going to the Target. Target's no more. We did finally get the toilet unplugged.
Mm-hmm.
We almost had to, or not the toilet, but the sewer line
Yes.
undone. But here's the key part of that. Dan, he never asked me what was going on. He just said, I know you got it handled. And he kept going about that whole evening like nothing was going on. Who does that? I would have fired me. I would have fired me on the spot, but he didn't.
Let you solve it first, right?
Yes, solve it.
Sure.
And the next day, fire me.
Yeah, it's been great.
But I say that was my best and worst day at Chick-fil-A because obviously why it was worse, but best because I learned the true character of the company. And Dan, and because pressure situations, that's where you find out people's character. Again, if I was in his shoes, I would have come unglued, but he didn't. He just let me handle it and let us deal with it. He just went about like he normally does. At that time, he would, if people wanted to, he would have them invite them in, and throughout the night they serve food and things. But he said, "Hey, we're going to do Sundays inside," and he did a little Bible study. But that was all going on at this time. But that was my best, and my boss's boss was there, and he let me handle it too. Like who does that?
Isn't that one of the most remarkable traits of a leader, to entrust their team that when it gets messy,
yes,
to just let them do their thing?
And that's the true. You said it very well. That's the true test. When you're under pressure, that reveals character. It's a lot of trust that's placed into. That's one of the things when I came over. When I was at Carl's, I was a vice president over there. I was overseeing facilities, new construction. Came over, and when I was going through the decision process to basically become a project manager, taking a bunch of steps back in position. But I was so excited about the brand once I got to know the people. But back to your point, the trust, I saw that there was a whole different level of trust that I'd seen in my past lives that they put in everybody to make decisions. And and what we do, it's not tens of thousands of dollars, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, decisions that we make. And we trust that. And we still do that today. We trust the team. And so I think you got to make sure you hire the right people and trust them.
What a fun culture. One of the stores that you've built that I think is one of the most remarkable from my perspective is the one in Maui. And it's probably because my family enjoys going to the islands.
Love it. Yeah.
Especially during the cold, winter months. Sometimes we like to get over there for a little warmth. And it's like the first stop. You land, all the kids are cranky. You're in the rental van. Everybody's yelling at each other. It's like, all right, let's just hit a quick Chick-fil-A. Let's give everybody some fries. We got a real hangry situation on our hands. What is it like to build a store in Hawaii?
Yeah, that was an interesting process. And you know this, but you really have to learn it that everything gets there by a boat, right? Everything is shipped there. The food shipped there, everything's shipped there. So, and it's very much a family culture right there, which matches with what we do. It's this idea of family ohana, right? That's there. And so part of that is using local folks. So we have local contractors, local architects, local engineers that are a part of that community. But I think the overall process was very interesting, obviously figuring out where we were going to go first. But then as we built it, the process there from, as you can imagine, is slower, just a slower pace, island time. But that was a big learning. And actually, I probably learned a lot more on just from our supply chain folks in getting food there, right? You have to have the right folks to get food there. And that was something that I never really had to deal with in the past because construction guy, development guy, the food's going to get there when it gets there. We're worried about, hey, can we get switchgear there, right? Those are the things that have been challenging, especially the last couple of years. But that was very interesting in how they went about that. So it takes years in the making, right? We're going out there before the first one opened. We're 5 years out from our first, but now we're fortunate. We have on Oahu, we have 3 open and we have 2 more under construction as we speak. And then the Maui location.
So if you're seeing a 34 to 35 month time frame from rec approval to serving chicken, on the mainland, does that, I assume that's longer that you're experiencing there in Hawaii?
It is longer. A lot of our projects don't have entitlement there, right? It's just permitting, but their permit process is very long there. And so, yes, it is taking a little bit longer. It's probably closer to 40 months that we're looking at. So almost 4 years for that process. The build time's a little longer, another couple months. And everybody told us, and more expensive, right? Everyone told us, I talked to others in the industry and before we went, and they all said the same thing. It's going to take longer. It's going to cost more.
It's not like you're building in inexpensive place. I mean, you're building in LA, you're building in the Bay Area, right?
Yes.
And you're still finding cost increases as you go to the islands.
Yep. It's very much a premium to build there.
20, 30%?
Yeah. It's probably, 30%.
30%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 30% more. So that's expensive. But interestingly enough, on the mainland, Montana's been one of the most expensive markets to build in. I know you said you guys are doing work there. We were shocked. Yeah. But it is very expensive to build there and make deals pencil.
Our last few buildings that we've priced through Wyoming and Montana, you get the numbers back and you're just looking at them and you're like, I mean, this is like 50% more expensive than it'd be in Denver or Salt Lake.
Yes.
And you're like, what on earth?
Yes. There's land there. There's people there.
It's just a labor issue.
It's purely. It is a labor issue.
And I guess some of those materials, they got to, to your point, everything arrives by boat. When you're in the mountains and you're rural, it arrives by truck and it's got to get there.
Yes.
So it is a longer haul.
Yes. But it's a labor issue. Yes, for sure.
So you're in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. How many days a week do you think?
2-3 days a week, okay. Or looking at sites or construction sites.
All right. So you've explored the entire menu. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've had.
All right. So you're there at lunchtime. What's your go-to?
A spicy chicken sandwich is my go-to for sure.
Grilled or fried?
Fried. I love. But I'll tell you, when we do the limited time, we have a spicy grilled that is really good too. But yes, and right now the smokehouse barbecue is excellent. But spicy, the fried is my favorite menu item.
One of my favorite parts about Chick-fil-A is I have celiac, and it's one of the spots that I can go on earth, and I literally cannot count a single time ever I've got sick as a result of eating a Chick. So it's fantastic, right? So I love that they've got fried and grilled, but then they also appeal to that crowd.
Yes, it's been my wife similar. She can't have that as well. So yeah, she's appreciative that we have grilled nuggets. We have the grilled sandwich where you can get an alternate bun, so gluten-free bun. So that's very helpful. Yes,
I'm a grilled nugget, kale salad. That's my go-to.
See, right, you're much healthier than I am. So
I just don't need as many carbs.
Yes,
it's this weird problem when I bend my elbow and there's carb in my hand. My mouth just opens. Right
yes.
So, and you've probably built your point status up to some epic levels then.
You know, we were talking about this earlier. I don't get them up very high because my family uses them and brings
there you
it
go.
down.
Yes.
But so that's always fun to see where you're tracking on the points.
I feel like your social media team needs to dive in and go figure out who is the lifetime points like award leader.
That's a great idea.
In the whole chain.
Yes.
Or even who's the top 10. Like it'd be wild to highlight some of those people because some of the point totals are crazy. I think my lifetime points is at like 88,000, which I'm cheating. We have 7 people eating under one, number, right?
Yes.
So, when we go through the drive-through, it's not $12 ever.
Yes.
It's a lot more than that.
Yes.
So it is funny though, because every once in a while, like I'll tweet and be like, here's my point total. And then people will come in out of left field and it's like, oh, I have 200,000 points. And you're just like, do you eat a Chick-fil-A every day of your life?
Yes.
Like, it blows my mind.
Yes. We're grateful that we have fans that come so often that we're very thankful for that. So loyal following.
Did you create the cow campaign?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, that was you?
Yes. No, but I have to admit, so full disclosure here again, when I first came, I was like, I don't get it. Like the cow, they're like, Don, like don't eat the cow, eat chicken. I'm like, oh, there you go. So I'm a construction guy, but it's been a huge win, and they've been very creative with that.
I mean, it's such an unbelievable marketing campaign. Whoever came up with that deserves a couple of bonuses, I feel like.
Agreed. Yes.
That's been a good one.
Yes.
That's fun. I had no idea until I went and checked out the elevated drive-through concept and then talked with my friend Ken, who's friends with a few of the with the Kathy family. I had no idea there were all these concept stores.
Yes.
That existed in the Atlanta world, other stuff.
Yeah, it's something that we don't see out here. So we have Truett's Grill, which is a Chick-fil-A in combination with Truett's original design.
Because it was a diner. He originally ran a diner.
Yep, yeah. It was a diner. And so it's a combination of those two. We also have what's called Truett's Luau, which most people don't know, which is a Hawaiian concept that infused so you can get pineapple variations of things. But Truett was always reinventing things. You think about from his first location in 1946 to 1967 when he had Chick-fil-A when we opened in the mall, the first one. He was failing a lot. And I think people forget how much he was failing and failing forward, right? He was constantly trying. He built a second restaurant at one time. It burnt down right after. He said that was God's way of saying that he shouldn't have a second location. But he tried a lot of different, he tried to franchise the sandwich. He tried to sell the sandwich. He tried to do a bunch of different things, but that was a 20-year period that people think, oh, Chick-fil-A is just amazing what it's done. But Truett was always that way. He was always trying to reinvent things. So even before he passed, he started a pizza concept. And so that's no longer there. Didn't make it. Might be because they didn't serve alcohol there. A lot of people want pizza and beer. So I think that might have been it. Yeah. But ultimately the point is he was always trying something new. He was always trying, even as he got later in life. You would see sitting there on a $20+ billion company, why are you trying new things? But that was it. He was into real estate, really into real estate. He was always looking for a deal. He was into cars too. There's at the home office, there's the Batmobile is there.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So he was very much into cars and deals. He always liked good deals. But yes, so those concepts back in Atlanta are very interesting that we're not aware of out west.
And then there's a museum as well, right?
Yeah. So in the home office, there's a museum that you can go walk through and learn. You can do what we call backstage tour. And if you're ever interested, you can do it actually on the app and sign up to go take a tour. And yes, some of the Batmobiles there and some of the other cars that he had are there as well.
Listen, I'm certain there are a few special personalities that like our podcast here and myself included that would really nerd out at a high level with a backstage tour at the Chick-fil-A headquarters. That's going on my bucket list.
You guys are welcome. Yeah, welcome. I'd love to host you out there. Love to do that.
Unbelievable. Well, as we wrap up, can you give us any inside intel? Where's Chick-fil-A headed from here? You're the market leader in the QSR world. You got the highest volumes out there. You came down a little bit year over year, according to your FDD docs that just went out. But you were just in step with what most concepts experience, right? It was a softer market for fast food last year. Where are you headed from here?
Well, we still have plenty of runway in the U.S., right? We have 3,000 plus locations. You look at some of our competitors have 14,000. I think it's about the right kind of growth. I think coming out of COVID, where there was just so much volume for a lot of us that had drive-throughs, that we felt like we were maybe the go close method was what we needed to do just to help those restaurants, because they were just busting at the seams. But I think we've pulled back from that. I think that's somewhat what we're seeing, is that we said, okay, let's not impact locations. But bigger picture, it's really about international as well. So we're in Canada now. We're in Puerto Rico. We just opened in the UK just recently. And then we're starting to look at Singapore. So that's a whole different group. But I think that's really, we talk about these growth curves in our company. You talk about the first one was really when we got into malls, right? Second one, freestanders in the 80s, when we started having freestanders with drive-through, which you hear the stories back then, they were very nervous about the first. And you're looking back, you say that was obviously success. But and then some people say, hey, the other growth curve was really about third party and things like that. But really, the next one's going to be international, and the groups that are working on that, it's amazing. We're still trying to work it the traditional way, where we have an owner operator. So it's hard when you go international to try and couple that, find people, develop those areas, new laws. How do you get through those things? So yeah, that's where we're headed. That's where I'm excited about for our company, is to see what that looks like.
Be interesting to see how the international customer responds to your chicken as well. It's such a unique taste, the way you do the brining.
It's very unique. A lot of the other places, especially as you think of Asia, they like bone in. Mm-hmm. And so it'll be interesting, to your point, how they react to that. But it's amazing to me when I go places. I know Hawaii is not international, but before we started developing Hawaii and we were going out there scouting, it was amazing. I was at the rental car, and they saw on my profile that I was Chick-fil-A, and they go, "Oh, I love Chick-fil-A." I said, how do you know Chick-fil-A? We think island. Yeah. And the reality is that they're coming out west. They come to Las Vegas, especially. They go to college there. They have family there. So people, I think the same will be for Europe, as people have come here and they know people in the U.S. But yes, that'll be interesting how it adapts in those countries to that flavor profile, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I did go through a drive-through Starbucks in London last summer, mostly just because I had to,
yes,
right? And go through the other direction, which always throws your brain off.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So your international team's got to inverse everything.
Yes, yeah. Flip it the other way. But they're doing some exciting work and challenges and things that we don't think about, like the amount of power. So as they're in the UK, even as we're talking about Singapore, they don't get the amount of power that we are used to getting here. It's very limited in some of these spaces. Most of our freestanding restaurants have 1,200 amps, mm-hmm. which is higher than others in the industry, just because of all of our cooking equipment is electric. We don't have any gas cooking. But anyways, point is, just got to adapt to that and the construction techniques. And in Puerto Rico, we were building the canopies that we have here over our drive-through, which are metal. It was actually more cost effective there to make them out of concrete. So things that you wouldn't think of. So sure. You got to adapt to what they're used to building there.
Is it any easier to get switchgear and transformers and panels in those other areas?
I'll have to ask them. We're all, as we've got coming out of this and ordering all of our switchgear a year out. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to ask them that.
I got to tell you, I mean, every time I turn on any social media channel, any news source whatsoever, and you hear AI, and I'm like, there's no more electrical production being built.
Yes. Yeah.
Could somebody start building some more factories, please?
Yes.
We are going to have a real bottleneck here.
HVAC, switchgear, those are the ones that finally they're coming back into control. But yeah, those have been our heartburn for the last couple of years.
Well, the entire office is a super fan of your concept, and we all appreciate being walkable to Eric's store here. And thank you for coming on the Dirt Dog Pod with us today.
It's my pleasure. Like I said at the beginning, a fan. I've enjoyed listening to the variety that you've provided, and interesting. I think all of us development, real estate nerds love it because we talk, that's what we talk about all the time. And so appreciate you providing this avenue.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.